let's get to the racing report. Speaking of slushy, racing report brought to you by CanTorque. They offer sale, rental, repair, and calibration of hydraulic, pneumatic, and battery-powered torque wrenches, stud tensioners, and flange maintenance equipment. Order today at CanTorque.com. As we're joined once again in studio by Colin Livingston. And Colin, 2 races. Like we talked about coaches getting fired quick, but Liam Lawson gets 2 races in Red Bull, and he's dropped. And Yuki Tsunoda will now replace him. You had like Pierre Gasly was dropped after 12 races. Alex Albon came in 21 races. Alex Albon was actually dropped after 26. Then it went to Sergio Perez. But that seems like a lifetime. What do you make of this decision? Lawson out, Tsunoda in.
It's tough to argue that Liam performed very well at the first 2 races. Obviously, he didn't. But you have to take a look at Red Bull as an organization and understand that they didn't do anything to help him out. They basically promoted him from the junior team to the big team. It was done fairly, like kind of over a barrel with the fact that they had to buy Perez out last year. Perez ended up, depending on how you want to look at it, my opinion is Perez ended up costing them the constructor's title last year. Verstappen won the driver's title, did all right. Perez didn't score any points towards the end of the year. Like, he was basically a non-factor. He crashed a lot. He, was knocked out of Q1 multiple times, hardly ever got out of Q2 towards the end of the year. This is a driver, though, Perez, who evolved with the car. He got to spend years there. He had success with Red Bull, and his performance really started to fall off. With someone like Lawson, he never got the chance to do anything. When you look back at how he got thrown to the deep end, when they signed him, of course, they said, we know what this kid is capable of. We see what he's doing already in the junior team. We know, we've taken a look at the data. We know what this guy's going to do. They didn't really test him a lot in the off season. They didn't put him in they didn't give him the miles in the previous cars, which they're allowed to do under the TPC, the testing of previous year's cars allotment. Like Kimi Antonelli, it's reported from Mercedes, did over 9,000 miles. He had over 60 test days in the offseason leading up to this year. The kid did lap after lap after lap. He was prepared. He knew what he was getting into. Lawson got to go to Bahrain in a car that they had to shake down over 3 days, and then he got thrown to the wolves. The problem was that the 2 tracks that he's raced at, being Australia at Albert Park and then Shanghai, he'd never even been to these tracks. Aside from running laps in the simulator, he had no experience. And what's really crazy is that he's got a massive amount of experience at the next track the series is going to go to, which is Suzuka in Japan. But they just made this decision. It's really, really shady. I'm really reluctant to use terms like unfair or he didn't deserve, because in racing, it really doesn't matter. But when you sign somebody and you promote them, you're outright saying, if you don't say it, you're implying we've done our research. We know that this is the best candidate. And if you're going that far out onto a limb to say that this is your driver, what does it say when you pull him out after 2 races and you don't really give him a chance? And even Max is struggling in the car, aside from having a little bit of success in the sprint race, finishing second to Lewis. Max is not setting the world on fire. So the car is not great. And if Max is struggling in the car that's designed for Max, somebody who's never driven the style that he does is going to be lost. Like, we've talked about it before, whether you're a racer, you're not a racer, the only way to kind of best explain it, how Max likes his car, is really, really, really front end dependent. And it's super, super sensitive in the front end. Like, if you take the sensitivity of the mouse on your computer and crank the sensitivity all the way up so that when you barely move the mouse, the mouse pointer is jumping all over the screen. I don't like that in a car. I don't like that as a mouse. that's kind of how he drives, is very little steering input with very, very extreme steering output. It takes a long time for people to get used to this, and they just didn't give the kid a chance. It's really disappointing. It's cruel. It'll be funny. I don't wish, either one of the drivers ill, because they're just drivers. They're doing what they're paid to do. It's going to be really cool to see Yuki in, the top seat in his home Grand Prix, not this weekend, but next weekend. But it would be hilarious to see Lawson finish ahead of either one of the Red Bulls in the junior car.
Well, yeah. Well, that would be funny. Yeah. But what do you think? What about Yuki and changing cars? Like, how big of a change is this going to be for him?
It's going to be huge. He's at least had the benefit of testing last year's car a handful of times. Like, he ran the test at Silverstone. He's done some tire testing. But whether he can have success is a different story. Like, doing test laps is very different from race laps. And once you're in, where it counts, it's like, you and I have been on the driving range together, and we hit, we crush 5-iron after 5-iron after 5-iron and melt drives on the driving range. And all of a sudden you put your peg in the ground on the first tee, and you can't get out of your own shadow. That's what happens with drivers. Now, these are, highly skilled professionals. It'd be great to see him do well, especially in front of his hometown crowd, but he's not just going to jump in and light the world on fire. Again, this car is built for Max Verstappen, which is another thing that the team should be looking at, is that when you customize the thing that much to one driver's very unique skill set, you can't expect somebody else to be able to just jump in and match, because nobody really drives like Max does. He's the best at what he does in the way that he does it. The only driver that they've really had in the other seat that gave Max a run for his money is Danny Ricciardo, but Danny's days are long gone.
No, well, yeah, he's not coming back anytime soon. Now, looking ahead now, what differences did you see in race 2? Because you said, hey, race 1, don't go crazy over it, but obviously Red Bull didn't listen. They made the big changes after race 2. Did you see anything in the second weekend that has your interest peaked for what we're going to see in race 3?
Yeah, I mean, getting to see Lewis, win a pole and win the sprint race on Saturday was very cool. Getting to see Lewis and Max run 1 and 2 was very reminiscent of, 2021 and the years leading up to it. Ferrari has a lot of work to do with their radio communication. So we talked about it after the first race. There was a lot reported that Lewis was kind of chippy at his engineer, and the engineer was doing a few things that Lewis didn't like. I watched last weekend's race twice. So I watched it once on F1 TV. I watched the broadcast version of it, and then something didn't quite sit right with me, and I watched the race immediately after, just from Lewis's onboard camera. So when you watch from one driver's perspective, you get the unedited radio broadcast. And it was really strange that the team doesn't validate what the driver's doing, and the engineer doesn't really offer any words of encouragement. He was just giving information. Like, he would tell Lewis to try a certain thing, and then whether it worked or it didn't, they never validated it. They never said, like, okay, whatever, try mode 6. Lewis didn't really say anything, and the team never said anything back to him. But I shouldn't say big, because compared to what's going on now, it was, moderately insignificant. But during the broadcast, they kept talking about how the team wanted Lewis to switch positions with Leclerc. And it was really strange the way it happened. But when I watched from Lewis's standpoint, it was actually Lewis's idea to swap the cars, because he said, like, I'm really struggling with this. I'm probably going to let Charles by. A couple of laps go, and they said, okay, we're going to do the car swap now. And he's like, well, hold on, I'm starting to catch the guys in front of me. Let me see how this plays out. And then they came back to him a couple laps later and said, okay, well, we're going to do the swap at turn 13. He said, guys, I'll tell you when we're going to do the swap. But they only broadcast the last two messages, they didn't broadcast the first message where Lewis actually presented the idea with these guys. So that was really strange. From my standpoint and my personal belief, again, I work as a spotter, and part of my job, no matter what's going on the track, I believe it's to keep my driver focused on what they're doing. And that's, the engineer, they're not watching over the driver's shoulder like we do, but they've got all the telemetry. They know exactly what the driver's doing. If he changes a switch, if he hits a button, they know exactly what's going on. So to be able to tell the driver, look, we saw what you tried there. It's obviously not working. Try this instead. Or, we know it's a long race. Just get us to the pit stop, but keep pushing. You're doing a good job. Those are things a driver's never going to complain about, but you kind of keep your driver focused. And what was really strange is Lewis complaining about, really, really fighting oversteer. I watched him go through the turn 13 complex onto the back straightaway, and you could, every lap, he's having to short shift as he starts coming out of the corner, because if he didn't, he was going to lose the back end. He was driving with a cock steering wheel as well. So I think he got a bit of damage from the contact he made with Charles on the opening lap. But yeah, I mean, they're going to get it figured out eventually, but the end of the day, Lewis was DQ'd because his car was underweight. Charles' car was DQ'd, or Lewis, they had too much plank wear. So they have a piece of wood on the bottom of the car to prevent you. You basically have,
it prevents it from scratching on the surface all the time, right?
Basically what it does is it's an indicator to let you know how many times, how low you're running the car. They don't want you to run the car on the ground, because that's a dangerous thing. I think he was half a millimeter too low on the plank wear. Charles was underweight and Pierre Gasly was underweight. So, these are
that's a pretty major mistake, is it not? How you underweight?
You under fuel for one. So, they try and run the least amount of fuel possible. Charles maybe didn't get enough pickup, but I think they probably, like what happened to George Russell last year at Spa, I think they probably planned to run a 2-stop race, then decided to switch it to a 1-stop. So their second set of tires overwore. He didn't do enough pickup. I mean, I don't think he could have picked up enough tire marbles, but the drivers, Max, Charles, a bunch of these drivers were driving into the grass on their in lap to throw mud on the car to get that extra weight. So they knew they were close, but this is a miscalculation. They should have known better. Realistically, it's inexcusable because they ran a sprint. So they ran, 20-ish laps on Saturday. They knew exactly how much fuel burn they'd have. They'd know how much tire wear they had. So that's incompetent is too strong a word, but it's pretty unforgivable to make those mistakes. Lewis's, though, that's a strange one, because they've said that they made the wrong setup adjustment after the sprint. They wanted to try something to get better, but they went the wrong way. By the time they made the adjustment, they couldn't go back. So it'll be interesting. I mean, Japan's just such a fun track.
It is good. Now, speaking of bad tracks, let's end on IndyCar.
Okay. Yes.
And basically, it's it's a private track. They didn't even have 5,000 people in the stands.
No.
To sit there. The broadcast, there was a loss of power, so it wasn't even broadcast for 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much that had to do with the if they had the power there, but I can't remember the name of the track they're racing at, but they used to do exhibitions there. And they decide, this is good. It would be like an NHL game for anybody who's a non-racing fan. You're going to play an NHL game at, let's say, the Ardrossan Arena.
Kind of. It would almost be more like taking two NHL teams and turning them into roller hockey, because it's not really the same as normal hockey. Sure. They were at Thermal Club. Thermal is a private test track where, the track is surrounded by these multi-million-dollar homes. When you live there, you buy a garage at the private facility. These are people who have, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, very, very high-end street cars, and they can go out onto the track and they can do what we call lapping, where they get to open these cars up where they can't do it on public roads very safely and have fun. But lapping tracks are different from race tracks because they flow. They're designed to let you go fast through corners, to carry on to straightaways, to open it up, where a racetrack has hard braking zones. Hard braking zones is what turns into passing, and that's what we didn't see a lot of at Thermal. The only passing that really happened was when a team was on new tires against somebody else on old tires, or they had good red tires versus black tires. Lots of issues with the hybrid unit, which the series definitely has to look at because it is far from perfect. And watching these amazing drivers with these great cars race in front of no people is just bad. I mean, IndyCar is getting paid. The people who own that track are obviously paying significant amount of money to get the series there. So you can't fault the series for cashing in while they can, because cash is king when it comes to racing. But the maximum seating capacity, the maximum allowable capacity on the grounds for spectators was 5,000. I'm really guessing they didn't sell half their tickets, and the two grandstands were only like 5 rows tall. They could maybe hold 1,000 people, and at best they were half full, maybe less than that. You could see a bunch of people walking around, but it was a really boring race, and it's a shame because Indy is such great open wheel racing, whether they're running on an oval, road course, street course. They put on a great show. So hopefully they can grow past this.
2.5 weeks though until I get back. It's only still too long of a break. We'll see. Colin, we will chat with you next Thursday.
Look forward to it.
Have a good one. That's Colin Livingston joins us every Thursday here in the Racing Report.